My name is Paul Shelley, and welcome to the AstroHistorian. This is a channel dedicated to exploring and explaining the lore of sci-fi in space universes and discussing their impact. Today, we are doing our lore tours. The lore tours of IAE 2955. Joining you live from Orison, I will be walking through the hall to tell you about the lore of the ships on the floor. These are going to be a little bit shorter than usual, but I decided to do more of them so that we can get more people. This is a tradition I've done for 5-6 years now. And the idea is that I tell you a little bit about the history of the companies that are on the floor, and then we go to each of the ships and talk a little bit about their history. And the goal being to teach a little bit more about stuff. So, just guess. I am hanging out with a bunch of people in game right now. If you want to join us, make sure you hit up the Discord. It's in the links below. We're gonna do this at a similar time tomorrow, but then the rest of the time we're gonna be starting this at around 1 p.m. Eastern. Though I'm probably gonna push back the YouTube to be about like 2 p.m. Eastern because I gotta do some setups and that kind of stuff. Anywho, let's get started. I'm going to bring us into the game. There we go. All right, I'm going to unmute myself in Discord. All right. Joypop, Lentz, and Alex, if you can join me, feel free to join me. I'll do my best to get started. You can catch up if you need to. Clear the contacts. Leave group. There we go. All right. Checking the mic. Can you hear me?
Are you all good on this one? Yep.
Can you hear me
in game yet?
in game? Can't hear me in game.
Oh yeah, no I can.
Now you can hear me in game?
Yep.
All right, you might want to mute me in case, because I'm going to be going in here as well, but worst comes to worst. Let me go around and yell at people, hey, starting a lore tour. Lore tour in a few minutes. If you want to join, it's free. Lore tour for RSI. Come on down to the lore tour. Quick. All right. Can you hear me in game as well? I am now muted in Discord. Can you hear me in game?
You're not. I can hear you.
Oh, damn it. Hold on.
Not in the game.
I'm muted in Discord. Now can you hear me in game? Talking in game. I am talking in game again using a different link. No. All right. Well, I'll leave it in microphone open, and then we'll see if people can hear us or not. Oh, it helps if I actually move the microphone to my face, though. Can you hear me in game now? I'm talking in game, but I'm not in. I'm muted in Discord.
Unfortunately not.
No. Okay. Okay. Oh, do our best. I will join the Lord Tour tomorrow, currently in my salvation. That is entirely fine. We'll be doing this every day from now until the end of till the very end of the lore tours, or the floors. So which is until next Friday. These will be pretty short, but we'll be gonna go through them, all of them. Are you gonna explain what the meteor is for? I mean, to a degree, yes. The problem is that a lot of this stuff doesn't really have lore, so most of what we'll be talking about is the Ursa and the Perseus. Triangle and Triangles, we haven't started yet, buddy, so you're good. There'll be a Q&A session after, where we'll talk about, we'll take questions about anything in the lore. We'll start here at the top of the hour. Oh, Swinno, thank you so much for that Twitch Prime sub. Oh, I'm gonna get something to drink real quick before we get started. Where are the convenience stands? Did they get rid of the convenience stands?
There's one on the right-hand side as you go in.
As you come into the...
Oh, well, I think there's one on the left and right, actually. You just gotta...
Oh, I see it now. It LOD out. No cruise, 0 stars. That should get me by. All right, let's head back. I'm surprised there's no lore for the Lynx. Nah, not really. But there is some lore for the Ursa. Thank you, Bill Tavarn, for giving that sub to Kurami as well. All right. With that being said, let's get started here. Hello, my name is Paul Shelley. Welcome to the Lore Tours. Today, we're going to be going over the RSI, the history of RSI. I'm here with a couple people on the floor. We'll be doing this every day, as I've been saying, for the rest of the sale. Though the most of the days is going to be starting at about like 1 or 2 p.m. Eastern. So, with that being said, come join us as we walk to the floor to talk a little bit about RSI. So, we'll stay out here with the Salvation, because a bunch of these are pretty new. And we'll say, here is RSI. Turn the volume a little bit. RSI is one of the oldest companies in the verse. It was founded in 2038 by a man by the name of Chris Roberts, no relation. And it was founded specifically during the space boom of the early 21st century. The idea was to take advantage of space materials and expand beyond Earth. RSI started off doing many different things, including building cricket farms for food and this the energy efficient power relays. They basically did everything but build spaceships, while the founder was out looking for some sort of edge, something to give them a competitive edge over all of the other space industries that were existing in the 2030s. And I
don't know if you know it, don't know if you know or not, man, but you ain't got no drawers now.
Live show.
Pervert on aisle 4.
Oh God, this is one of those problems. All right, so it wasn't until much later in the I think it's like 25 or 2050 something, 2040s, that they invented quantum travel because of a man by the name of Dr. Scott Childress, who was trying to experiment with this new element that they had discovered called quantanium. He believed you could use quantanium to manipulate the mass in a way to create the Alcubierre drive, to basically create an Alcubierre warp drive. And that really is what the quantum core engine was, which is first built by RSI, and then it became standard across all of humanity, began to pick up and figure out how to use it themselves. This started a golden age of transportation and space travel led by Robert Space Industries themselves. They would go on to spearhead the development to terraform Mars and also be one of the first to build a functioning jump engine to travel safely between between systems using jump points much later. They've been around forever, and while they do make ships, they make just about everything. They make terraformation technology, they make clothing, they make spacesuits. I think they make everything but weapons themselves. So as a result, they are a very detailed company that builds a lot of spaceships. But them being very old means they produce just about any kind of ship that exists. So starting off, we'll take a look at the RSI Salvation. This is a brand new ship, just came out. So this is a brand new in the verse as well. There is no lore behind it. But this is a great example of the kind of ships that RSI builds. They will build a starter early light salvager and also build the Meteor and the Perseus and the luxury Lynx. So they build a lot of ships that sort of meet a variety of different needs. All right, with that said, let's go to the Meteor. So the RSI Meteor is built out of the chassis of the RSI Mantis. We don't have a lot of information about the Meteor or the Mantis, but we do know that they're fairly recent inventions, with the Mantis being within the last 20 years and the Meteor possibly this last year. Both of these were designed in similar styles as the traditional RSI design. You can see with the nacelles design. This is one of those standard patterns that you'll see with almost every RSI ship, is having the thrusters in a sort of nacelle pattern. Some of the older designs are more pronounced. I like to call it the Utopia Planitia style, very similar to the Star Trek designs. But they all keep a very same theme. Usually lots of hard angles, or well, I should say like curved off angles, but a lot of angles and the separated engines. This is a combat ship, a kind of interceptor through and through. All right, the first thing I actually have lore for, this is important, then we'll go over the extensive lore of the Perseus. The Lynx. So, the Lynx is a luxury rover. Let me see inside so I can show you.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Yes. So, this is a luxury vehicle built off of a military ground vehicle. This was built specifically... Yes, I can hear you in game. I don't know if he's talking to me or not. This is to go into the Constellation program. So, giving a little bit of background, the Constellation program is a unique program because it's basically designed to replace the Zeus. The Zeus was the workhorse of RSI for hundreds of years. The first commercially available spacecraft went through its own retrofits and changes, but more or less stayed the same for hundreds of years. But towards the 2600s, they began to phase out the older styles and tried to look for new stuff, which is where the Aurora comes from. but the constellation itself was built in 2712. It has undergone 4 different marks, but the constellation was sort of their answer to the replacement of the Zeus. The idea being we need a do-it-all ship that is able to get a lot of different people involved. So there's lots of different versions of the constellation which were built to serve very different purposes. And the Lynx is a great example of this. The original Ursa, was actually called the Marine Assault Vehicle. Let me take a look at it real quickly. You say 1 second. I don't have it here. I believe it's called the MAV, the Marine Assault Vehicle. I could be wrong on that one. But the original was a armored assault vehicle designed specifically for the Marines to use that RSI built for the military. They took that design and then retrofitted it for civilian use to create the RSI Ursa rover. The Ursa rover was built specifically to pair with one ship, the Constellation Aquila. The Constellation Aquila was their explorer version of their ship. And this is where RSI would get to work with people like Kruger Intergalactic, because Kruger Intergalactic was getting into the ship market, and they offered to build a stub fighter for one of their marks of constellations. I believe it was specifically the Mark IV, but it could be the Mark II, one of the marks. So the Lynx is built specifically to be housed in the Phoenix. The Phoenix itself was built as a sort of a dare. It was built off of a reality TV show, of all things. One reality TV show decided to, it's sort of like a Pimp My Ride, if that's an ancient reference now, but kind of show where they took vehicles and then overhauled them to do something very different from what they originally were. And there was a challenge to turn a constellation into a luxury ship. And so they created this sort of off-brand luxury ship that they could build with it. And the suits at RSI liked it so much that they built it in for real to sell it. And so as part of that program for the Phoenix, they created the Lynx, which is this, as you can see, very luxury-based rover. It's got some seats. It's got driver's seat, co-pilot seat, but it's got, like, you know, champagne. These things used to actually have champagne in them. Nice windows, all sorts of things. So this gives you kind of an example of how RSI builds vehicles. They often would build one vehicle and then iterate on that vehicle for tens, if not hundreds of years to sort of improve it. In fact, most recently, they did bring back the Zeus line with a completely redesigned from the ground up design to sort of not entirely replace the constellation, but sort of fill that gap between the smaller and larger ships in their lines. All right, let's talk about the oldest ship in the verse. Get up here so we can get a better look at it. All right, so this is the RSI Perseus. I did an entire video that I just released on the AstroHistorian YouTube. Go check it out if you haven't a chance to. So I'm not going to go over the details, but I will say the Perseus was first built in 2520 at the very beginning of the United Planets of Earth existence. It was built specifically to deal with a problem that was frequent throughout the UNE and the UPE, which was lack of defense for remote systems. The UNE and the UPE, the United Nations of Earth, and which then evolved into the United Planets of Earth, kept their home fleet, their main Navy fleet of massive capital ships, really close to Seoul. Seoul and Croshaw were mostly where they lived. As a result, anywhere outside of Earth or Mars or any of the Croshaw planets, and Shelley and so on and so forth, really didn't see a lot of defense, meaning that the people who were on the remote edges of the frontier had to defend themselves. However, every so often the Navy would send out a small patrol, usually only 1 or 2 capital ships, to patrol an area, but they never had enough support to really bring law and order to these regions. So often they would have to negotiate rather than fight with outlaws if they got into trouble. This meant that the UPE could not impose its own law and order on a lot of the territories which it supposedly had control over. And it was too expensive to send the fleet and also too risky to send the fleet out to do that. Thus, when they began to rearm in the early 26th century, partially because of the first contact with the Banu, they really wanted a ship that was cheap to make, they could produce a lot of, easy to man, only having a handful of people to do so, but have enough firepower and danger to counter anyone they encountered. That is the impetus for the RSI Perseus. This ship is designed to win fights without firing a shot, to look mean and to look dangerous enough that people just go, I don't want to fight. And that's really what it did for most of its existence. However, it suffered from one major problem. This ship originally did not have a shield, because shield technology at the time was very primitive and it required a heavy power plant to be able to work, and the Perseus just didn't have a heavy enough power plant to justify a shield. Thus, it, instead of having a power shield, it had armor, just thick mounts of armor to keep it alive. So even though eventually the ship would gain a shield, its capabilities were always hampered by the fact that it was much slower than ships of its type because of the armor. It still needed that armor to function, and even with a shield kind of retrofitted on, kind of slapped on, it really wasn't an effective ship for its size. But the UPE and eventually the UEE never really had the ability to replace this ship fully, because it didn't cost a lot of money to make and it didn't cost a lot of people to operate. So it became a staple on the Peri line, where it would patrol the border between human and Xi'an space in dozens, if not hundreds, of ships at a time, because you could just stick a squadron of these on the border and you had an insane amount of firepower and maneuverability. This ship has originally built with 2 size 7s on each turret, and two twin size 3 Gatlings at the top, which were remote controlled and could be used to shoot down incoming missiles and torpedoes, plus 20 size 5 torpedoes in its complement. This thing was nasty, but mostly, and more specifically, only to ships its size and smaller. It's designed to bully ships, not punch up, but punch down. And that is where it really shined, because, again, it showing up, you know this thing had enough firepower to kill you unless you were in a capital ship. Thus, you'd mostly either try to run away or surrender, because you're not going to survive a salvo from these things. Now, because of its technological disadvantage, even though it was very effective at what it did, it was still less effective compared to the new and improved ships like the Idris, which was built about 80 years after this ship went into service. Plus ships like the Javelin and other smaller combat ships, more efficient, longer range fighters like the Vanguard series, all began to show how old the Perseus was. So by the early 29th century, like 2820, 2830, this ship was entirely retired from service. There were still a handful that were still serving, but they'd stopped producing them entirely by the 29th century. That would change in October of 2946 during the Battle of Oberon. Because of the declaration of war with the Vandul, the UEE Navy had basically whatever ships it needed to on staff to operate for what it needed to, which included the last remaining old Perseuses. Those Perseuses were called into service when a Vandul invasion of the Oberon system, very similar to Nyx. It was a neutral system that had a lot of jump points to various parts of the Empire. So Admiral Bishop ordered the fleet into Oberon to protect Oberon from a Vanduul invasion, even though Oberon wasn't part of the UAE because of its strategic nature. The battle was pretty intense. Even though the UAE brought in the Retribution class super heavy dreadnought, no kingship showed up, but it was still a dangerous fight. The UAE just didn't have enough power to really fight back. At one point, one entire part of the line was held by a single Perseus called the UES Achilles. That Achilles got attacked by multiple Vanduul destroyers and fighters. This was a one-sided fight. The Achilles had no chance of surviving. However, it was able to put up an impressive fight. It seems like the Vanduul really hadn't faced many Perseuses, if any Perseus, before this battle, and especially in pitched battle. So they underestimated how tough this thing was, and underestimated its ability to sling out pain. So between its torpedoes and its guns, the Perseus was able to take out 2 entire Vanduul destroyers. These things are 4 times the mass of a Perseus. There's no business for this thing to fight these things. And was able to eventually be brought down, but not after a 2-to-1 kill ratio well over its designation. It survived and performed so well that Admiral Bishop himself asked RSI to build a new lineup of Perseuses for the 30th century. And that's what you see here. The Perseus has 4 size 8 Medusa cannons. These are bespoke Medusa cannons. They also include several PDCs all over it. I believe it's 6 PDCs over the hull. Each Medusa cannon turret has 2 additional hardpoints for size 3 weapons, plus it gained an additional forward-mounted kind of PDC in the front, not PDC, but a remote turret in the front. On top of all of that, its cargo bay got upsized so it could hold a significant amount of cargo plus vehicles. So I think it's almost 100 SCU of cargo. Welcome everyone from Tomato Stream. Hello, we're doing a lore tour, so I'm finishing up here. Perseus or Persei? It would be Persei, I believe. So this ship is really designed to meet the same specifications as the original Perseus. It's a little bit larger than the original Perseus, but it does have all of the design characteristics of the Perseus. In fact, if you look at this, its design itself, its design is heavily influenced ships of the modern era. If you look at this side, it's very similar to the Javelin. A lot of the kind of lines and stuff like that, because the Perseus was the first modern space combat ship when it was originally built. So a lot of ships took design cues from it because it was really effective at what it did when it did it. So this is sort of bringing back the original aesthetic while also sort of updating it for the modern era. Thus, this ship has become effective for both space and ground combat. That is what we have for now. Let's go hang out over here and take some questions. That over here. Get out of the way.
Your trip is ready to go the extra distance. Stop by Kruger Intergalactic to see their lineup.
Hey, yo, watch a lot of your YouTube videos. Fellow Redeemer Lover. Finally caught you on stream. Thank you for watching. I am streaming on Twitch and YouTube, by the way, so those of you who are watching this after the fact, you can join us live at twitch.tv/TheAstroPub or youtube.com/TheAstroHistorian on AstroHistorian/live. If you want to join us, we'll be back again in around the same time tomorrow, and then we'll also be live for the rest of the day, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday at around 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern. I'm thinking probably more 2 p.m. Eastern just so I have time to set up. But yeah, if you have any questions, either here in Discord or live or on Twitch, let me know. Are there any larger ships from the old Perseus time that were shielded that we know about? Yes. One of them is called the, I'm gonna say it wrong, the Indefatigable. I think is what it's supposed to be. The Indefatigable class battleship. We also know of the Oracle class battleship, or Oracle class cruiser. I think it's the other one. Indefatigable. 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 I don't know how to do it. No question. Just love your videos. Keep it up, man. Thank you. Now, if you have any questions about Star Citizen lore or anything else, let me know, and I'll do my best to answer. Question. Is there a cargo variant of the RSI Mantis Meteor chassis? Not that I know of, but I wouldn't be surprised if there were. RSI, CIG, but also RSI in general, loves to reuse their chassis. Can I enter the size 8 gun turret from the co-pilot chair? No, you have to actually physically man it. That's one of the throwbacks from the actual design before remote turrets were super common. I imagine that's more of a game balance thing, but kind of there. AKA unbeatable in the old dead language English steals from vocab from? Yeah. A lot of people, are the PDCs a new development? We don't know how long the UAE has used PDCs. I imagine they've been using PDCs for a while, though you got to remember that one of the biggest limitations for ships for the longest time has been a combination of heat and power. Heat only works with as radiation in the vacuum of space. So the larger the surface area of the ship, the better, the more heat can build up, unless you have coolers, but even coolers can only work for so long. Because coolers also need power. So the larger the size of the ship, the larger the power plant, but also the slower and less maneuverable and harder to handle a larger ship would be. So adding PDCs on top of the power restraints of the rest of the ship is definitely demanding. Question. How do you feel about the starter ship Intrepid? Personally, I like it. I feel like it needs more role than it currently has, but I like it. I like its moxie. I don't think it's a good starter ship. At least not that we know of yet. Not ship related, but what's the deal with Kronos? I was talking to someone in game and they said it was the planet being built. When was this talked about? It's been around for a very long time. It's called Synth World. It's a project that was developed in the aftermath of the Messer era, because one of the things that the new, kinder, gentler humanity like to talk about was that the main conflict for most of human history has been over terraformed and access to terraformable worlds. They felt like if they could build a synthetic world that they could live on, then they would be able to, if they were to build a synthetic world that they could live on, they'd be able to solve conflicts. What's the future for the Carrack? Well, the Carrack itself is designed as an explorer. Will the RSI Salvation fit into a Carrack? I don't believe so. So the Carrack is very much a explorer and a surveyor is another thing. In fact, in lore, there are versions that are designed for science, and those Am I back? Okay. I don't know if I'm back on YouTube, though. Okay, I am back on YouTube. I had a weird power flicker. It's raining here, so I had some issues there. Yeah, I 30K'd. I thought I 30K'd because I'm it was my side. It was like I literally like 2 of my monitors turned off. They've never gone on YouTube? Okay, good. As someone else who lives in Texas, if a butterfly farts, I'd potentially lose power. Yeah, PDC stands for Point Defense Cannon. Someone else asked another question. Let me answer it real quickly. Would a prisoner transport bounty hunting variant of the Perseus be possible based on its use in lore for patrolling? Absolutely. Though you don't really need one because you can just stick cargo, or you can stick those crates, those like we're just going to here. You could stick those into the cargo bay. Just those typical ones. Let me see. There was some YouTube one as well that I missed. Question. Hey, Astro. A year ago, I asked you what your expectations for the Perseus would be. I want to know how you feel about it and where it ended up. I mean, it feels almost exactly what my expectations were. It's a ship where you can hang out with 4 dudes and go shoot stuff. 4 or 5 people and go shoot stuff. They've made it better than it was originally designed. We'll be getting into the office hours here shortly afterwards. So if you have any questions about the game specifically, hold on to that and we'll get back to that when we do my other search. So for those of you watching this on the YouTube after the fact, I do a lot of streaming. One of the reasons why I don't do a lot of lore as much as I want to is because I also stream. I stream on Twitch, and I have been streaming on Twitch longer than I've been doing the lore content. And that streaming takes up a lot of my time and energy. So that's where I focus most of it. But if you want to just talk about the game, I hang out on there, twitch.tv/theastropub and youtube.com/theastropub where I do talking streams like this with what I call my office hours streams. That happens on Thursdays, though in the new year, they're going to be rotating that to Mondays. I also have a podcast I host called the Captain's Table podcast, which has been around for a very long time. So. Question, is the regen for pets in the Star Citizen universe /lore? Possibly. There is, humanity isn't the only one that's capable of doing regen. If you listen to Dr. Yorit, Van Duel, who the technology comes from, use it for their own purposes. They don't have regen the same way we do. It's slightly different. But we do know that Tavaran use it, because we have lore instances of Tavaran being able to use it. So I imagine you can pretty much use it on anything. Question, how do you feel about them having 2.5 systems out now so far? I think it's generous to call Nyx half a system. It's like a quarter of a system. It's a landing zone. How do you feel about them having 2 systems so far, and do you think they will finish it or drop another unfinished one? I think they'll finish it before they release Castra, only because Castra and Nyx 1 and Nyx 2 technically are blocked by the same thing. The same issue, which is their Genesis system, which they should be finishing, and my guess would be early next year. Do you think Anvil will make a version of the Carrack to be a gunship? I think they'll take the basis of the Anvil Carrack and turn it into a gunship. Like, kind of how we have the Meteor and the Mantis. I think they'll take the Carrack and they'll like redo it into a gunship style if they ever do a gunship from Anvil. Question, are you planning on participating in the Daymar rally? I don't know when the sign-ups are. I'm always bad about that. At the very least, I'll ask if I can come observe it. Are there any concepts you're personally most excited for? Ironclad. I have a merchantman, but Ironclad is my biggest one. Been using the Percy a lot since the patch. It's definitely lacking in HP, to be honest. It's because it needs armor. Like that's. I always like to emphasize this. Lore does not drive gameplay. Gameplay drives lore. But the concept of the Perseus, from its very inception, was that it is big and slow and heavy because it has a lot of armor on it. Now, they don't have armor in the game yet, so they can't really. They can fake it, but it doesn't make a lot of sense since CIG constantly believes that it's supposed to happen just around the corner. So it's important to note that it's likely going to have more armor, which means it's going to be tougher when it comes there. Holy, am I getting gifted and I didn't see anything? Holy, Escape, thank you for that 20 gifted subs. Did I answer your Galaxy question? How long will the stream last? So this stream, for those who just came in on Twitch, we're going to be going for hours. We're going to go into the office hours here in a bit. I've been streaming for almost an hour here. We'll wrap this up here in about 12 minutes or so here on YouTube, and I'll be rolling that into my regular YouTube. Long time waiting for the Percy. Yeah, I've been streaming for an hour and 47 minutes, but I'll be streaming for another at least 4 hours probably. There's a lot of stuff to get through. My org and I were able to kill Gilly's Hammerhead and my friends Solo and Idris K with just a 4-man Percy, no support ships. The more ships you can bring in terms of Perseus, if you can bring like two fully loaded Perseuses, you probably can dominate any ship in the game. Question: do you think CIG and we the citizens are playing two different game builds, which is why it takes a long time to mod it out for a build? Yes. How Star Citizen is built is they're currently on a build that they're testing with us right now, which is the one that has engineering and the fully integrated Vulcan and the new AI and all that kind of stuff. That build has been built and been working for like a year, maybe 6 months. But they talked about how that's the active version of Squadron. So the version we're getting is maybe not gold of Squadron, but close to it. So a lot of the stuff that's already been in Squadron is already there. Is that gin or vodka? I didn't see that. It's neither. It's Nuka-Cola. Even more dangerous. Nuka-Cola Quantum, in fact. I'm having trouble logging in. I was able to an hour ago, but I have to I had to log out and add my friend. Now I can't log back in. Try verifying your files. One of the things that's you're going to have that issue, especially today and tomorrow, because there's been some issues going around like that. It just CIG pushed it to the last minute, and there's going to be bugs that they're not used to, because I'm sure they're getting swamped. To give you an idea, I currently have 537 people watching. Hello, all of you crazy people. And that does mean that I have never, well, I've had this before, but very rarely. And that's a lot of it because of drops, which are enabled right now. So if you're watching me for at least 4 hours, you get the full set. So there's a lot of folks who are coming in for the drops, and then those new folks are coming in because they're like, what is this game, Star Citizen? Isn't this the scam? Or I've never heard of this. Let's watch this. So I will say, for those of you who don't know, especially if you're new here, hi, I'm Paul. I teach for a living. So my day job is a high school teacher. I do social studies, history, government, economics, psychology. So this is probably the closest chance I'm going to get to my student until Elite Squadron comes out that my students will accidentally find me. I have watched it, yeah. We're gonna watch it more on the office hours. If you have any questions about lore, please drop them now, and then we'll rotate into the next one. Question: how do you make that beautiful beard looking sharp, mate? Thank you. I need to actually trim it. It's a little bit too long, and especially like trim down here. I get it from my genes. Is there any lore on the galaxy? Not that we know of. It seems like it's a lot of the ships that are new are brand new, so we don't have a lot of the ideas. One of the things I would love for CIG to go through and give us at some point when they're not scrambling is to go through and look at every ship, come up with a designer for every ship, because you can probably reuse some of the designers because they already have kind of the years that came out. And just a little brief idea of what the building process was, where it came from. You know, like a page or so of information. Just having some brief jot down notes would go a long way to putting things together and make a lot of people connect to their ships more. I find that in my experience, people are a lot more interested in ships if that ship has history. Most people like the Gladiator because of the lore that I found, also because its usefulness. Its usefulness is there, but a lot of people didn't even know it had usefulness until they discovered the story of the Gladiator. And then when they came back, they're like, well, this ship is actually pretty good. So the more information about a ship in terms of its history and its place in the verse, I find that more people find connections with it because they can either find something similar or something funny or something engaging about the story of that ship. Do I ever mix Star Citizen lore and actual history in class? No. Thankfully. I didn't even download the patch. Been an issue for a while. Yeah. What brand, Drake, etc., do you think has the deepest lore? It's a tie between Drake and Anvil. RSI's got some deep lore, but a lot of their ships are just sort of mysteries. Like the Aurora, we don't know who designed the Aurora. We know when it was built, but we don't know who designed the constellation. There's like some little bits and pieces here and there for the constellation, which has the most of the lore, but we don't have anything about the Mantis or the Meteor or the, we have a little bit for the Ursa, not much. Like, to give you context, there is more information about the design of the Merlin than there is the design of the Aurora. I just got a new job. Time to dedicate more of my checking account towards Star Citizen. Congratulations. Which ship do you think is the closest to the Rossi? The Perseus, probably. The Polaris is probably the closest, but the Perseus is sort of the style of the Rossi. In your opinion, what's the best all-rounder ship for single player for a new starter? The Cutter, the Drake Cutter, the base Drake Cutter. If you want to go for advanced starter, then it's the Titan. If you want to go for the basics, like the cheapest and best price, best and cheapest, it's the Mustang. Because it's the cheapest. Well, the Clipper isn't a starter ship. It's like got 2 or 3 decks. I feel like the alien ships' lores are pretty cool. Some of them are. A lot of them are that detailed, though. Back before AI was banned, was it ever used to operate ships without people on board? Yes. In fact, it was. One of the reasons why I got banned in the first place was the earliest. I mean, when AI was developed in Star Citizen, we're talking 400 years ago in the lore. We're talking before they discovered jump points. They had working general artificial intelligence. That general artificial intelligence is partially responsible for the failure of the first Martian terraforming program, which was eventually redone without AI. It took a little bit longer, but it didn't fail. So, and that was like 22nd century. So it's around that same time as when the RSI chariot ships were built. The chariots, as far as we know, were colony ships. They were long duration colony ships where they would use stasis chambers, very similar to the bounty hunting station chambers we have now, to put the crew into suspended animation, and they put a general AI in charge, just an AI controller of the ship. The most famous of these was the Artemis, which may have been the first of these to be sent out. The no Cortana situation in this universe? There are, no. Like the Artemis was Janus. Janus was basically Cortana. But we're talking, again, 400, 600 years ago. The problem with AI is that when you put an AI in charge of something, it inevitably fails. Because you go from the, like, hey, let's test this out on small scale, to let's put people's lives in charge. And every single time it happens, it tries to kill people. Not because it, like, becomes evil in Skynet and tries to murder everyone, but because it doesn't know fully what it's doing, and so it makes a bunch of mistakes. Which is why it's been banned. It's basically been banned because we don't know how to build it without it making mistakes, and thus trying to kill everyone. Got the IAC report here. If your internet is too slow, you cannot update the game. Annoying to have to pack up my desktop and drive somewhere else to update the game. Sorry to hear that, Golden Triangles. I usually watch your content on YouTube. Came to Twitch for the drops. Hope you don't mind. After the drop, I'll head back to YouTube. Feel free. Enjoy it. I am streaming on YouTube, but I'm streaming on the AstroHistorian YouTube. Well, the first iteration of AI that we know of, is when the city of Tokyo, Japan, decided it would be a great idea to have their entire transportation system run by an AI. It ended horribly. Like, thousands of people died. We're not just talking about all of the transportation system. We're talking about the trains. We're talking about the stoplights. We're talking about the cars. So any automated cars were controlled by this system as well. It got turned on, and 1,000, I think it was like 5,000 to 6,000 people died in one day. Like instant traffic accidents, trains, derailing, that kind of thing. It's called the Lemming Car Incident. Yes, this was AGI. We don't know what the first AGI was, but we know that they had AGI by the middle of the 22nd century. Colby, if you're watching on the YouTube on the Astro Pub, that'll get started up here shortly. I'm going to finish up this Astro Historian one here, though. You're good. All right, y'all. Thank you. It sounds very similar to real life process. I do want to actually do a lore video on AI and how AI works in Star Citizen and why it's been banned and all the attempts for it's been. I've done one of these videos before, but I need to go in depth on each of the step process because you know a lot more about it, and sort of try to understand the themes of why AI doesn't work, which is Chris doesn't want you to automate stuff, but there's also other reasons for it. Very 80s sort of fear technology sort of thing. Thank you for watching. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'm going to be moving over to the Astro Pub YouTube. So don't go anywhere if you're watching this on Twitch. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you can join us for a discussion on more lore, news, and more on the Astro Pub Live. We'll be right back. Hey, there we go. Oop, wrong one. There we go. Hold on.